All right. Welcome to part two of our interview with Kristen Hallinan. In our first episode with Kristen, we got to know her and her story of growing up and learned about breaking free from bad family uh, background and patterns. And in this episode, we're going to learn more from Kristen about parenting and motherhood.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Okay. Great. So, for listeners that maybe didn't catch the first episode, can you share a little bit about your background, Kristen?
Yeah. So I come from a family of just my mom and my dad, my sister, and I. And my sister is 4 years younger than me. We grew up in Southern California, had a bunch of different moves, kind of a chaotic growing up. And then when we moved to Denver, when I was in high school, my parents went through a really ugly divorce. And that resulted in the many years after of me coping in some really unhealthy ways, making poor choices, and then eventually the Lord grabbing a hold of me. And at CU Boulder, of all places, I became a Christian. And He has been with me throughout trials ever since. And a lot of those trials originated from ugly and unhealthy behavior and thought patterns that I inherited from my family. And so, through counseling and prayer and experience, um, we have been, as a family, unlearning and putting a new narrative in place and
Mm.
making a legacy that's going to just leave a different legacy for our kids, tell a different story.
Yeah. So lots of growth and lots of healing in your life, uh, leading up to marriage and even through family and marriage. Um, but there's still challenges as mom, um, and with your
Yes.
family. And so, how many kids do you have, and how old are they?
Yeah, so we have four kids. We have three boys and a girl: a 13-year-old boy, a 11-year-old girl, 8-year-old boy, and 3-year-old boy
Mm-hmm. And you've been married how long?
for 15 years.
10 years. Okay. So,
Yeah.
uh, uh, busy and full household.
Yes, I always say the best kind of full.
Yeah. The uh, I'm curious about how uh, your family, how you've navigated this last year and a half during COVID-19 and pandemic. Uh, but uh, before that, uh, w- describe a little bit your family,
Yeah.
your parenting style and the kids.
So our four kids all just could not be more different from each other,
Mm.
um, which is fun and great and hard. Um, our oldest, Owen, he was not diagnosed with autism until he was 10.
Mm.
So we lived all of his growing up years not knowing how to help and how to love him best. We knew from about the age of 4 that he was just struggling with some things that other kids weren't. And so we were in the pediatrician and then psychologists and occupational therapists, and noticing that no matter who we went to, we never could quite put our finger on it. So we did a whole bunch of different therapies and counseling and just OT practices that were helpful for him. We got him through the years of learning how to read and learning how to cope in school, but not without significant challenges. And he just always struggled more than his peers, more than the rest of our kids. And it was not until we moved to Texas about 2.5 years ago. And um, we, at that point, Owen and I had been addressing our mental health together. So I
Mm.
would make coinciding appointments, and I would go in and then he would go in, and really teaching him what it looks like to properly deal with our mental health, because in addition to the autism, he has struggled with anxiety, depression, and OCD, some
Oh,
ADHD as well.
wow.
Um, and so we would tackle those appointments together. And it was at his very first Texas appointment. He walked out of the room, and our psychiatrist said, Owen has autism. And she was just looking for me to nod along as if I was going to confirm this. And I just broke down
Like
in
it was
tears.
obvious to you and just, yeah.
Yes,
But
like she was assuming I must know this.
mm,
And I broke down in tears, because what I had suspected and what I had asked doctors to evaluate for um, the past 6 years at that point was immediately obvious to her. And I just felt seen for the first time as a
mm.
mom. And so
Oh,
we
okay.
then got
No,
him
no,
proper custody.
no shame. It was a relief
It was a huge relief.
to
Yeah.
have the actual diagnosis.
The actual diagnosis was a relief. I will say that I've struggled with shame since, thinking back on especially ways that we would discipline him
Mm,
and things that we would discipline him for that we know now he didn't have any control over.
mm.
Um, and so that's really hard to look back as a parent.
Yeah, yeah. It was like a 6 years of lots of effort, and you were trying to 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 get him the help that you needed, that he needed. Um, yeah.
Yeah, we were trying, but just felt like we were never quite there.
Mhm. Um, for listeners, what and maybe it may vary, but what were some of the things that you uh, observed when he was like 4, 5, 6?
Yeah. The very first red flag that came up at the pediatrician's office was he did not pass his gross motor skill developmental form checklist.
Mm,
I think moms are familiar with filling out, what skills they have at different ages. And I believe there were 6 different gross motor skills that he was supposed to have completed at that point, and Owen could do none of them.
mm,
And so, hopping on one foot or throwing a ball overhand. Um, and then it was the same for fine motor skills. He couldn't tie his shoelaces or properly hold a fork, um, skills that should be coming along by that age. Um, and it was a developmental milestone that we now know, but didn't know then as first time parents, that should have been a red flag, but he never crawled. He was a late
mm,
walker, and a lot of kids are late walkers, but Owen never crawled. And that's important because the left, right, and going back and forth with a crawling motion, it crosses the midline of the brain. And when they don't have that repetition and develop that, they are literally not connecting certain
mm.
neurons.
So
And
the sides of your brain aren't learning how to communicate with each
yes,
other.
yep,
Mm, wow.
exactly. And so that should have been a red flag for us. We now know.
Yeah. As you were, and I know it might be hard to summarize like years because this is years, but when he was little, how were you feeling with seeing him not hit these milestones?
It was, I would say it was hard as a parent, just individually. You feel some shame with, like, am I doing something wrong? Am I not teaching them to do these
Mm,
things right? And for me, I kind of vacillated back and forth between that and then also, like, don't put so much pressure on yourself. Don't put so much pressure on him. It's fine. Maybe he's just a little delayed in this,
mhm,
and kind of wanting to rationalize it that way. So I would say that was a struggle, but really the hardest thing was um, his social skills were also super delayed.
mm,
And what was him interacting with the world as he saw it in just a really different way than other kids,
Mm.
was seen by other kids and other parents as sometimes aggressive or maybe like bullying like behavior. Um, and so we struggled a lot with friendships, not only his friendships at preschool and church and places, but also our friendship struggled because all of a sudden people didn't want to have us over for dinner
Mm.
or over for a play date because Owen played in a way that made them uncomfortable.
Yeah. So, did you feel isolated or alone during
Definitely.
those times? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The um. So, uh, lots of appointments, lots of assessments, and trying different things. Um. And you guys have lots of kids. You're busy. Um.
Yes.
How did that affect you and your husband? Because in the last episode, you mentioned that you guys are pretty different personality wise. So, with your
Yes.
son's challenges, how did you both like tackle that?
I would say it affected us differently. I went into survival mama bear mode
Mama bear.
and yes, let's tackle this and let's get this done and let's resource him as well as we possibly can. And it was harder for my husband for sure. I think he felt more shame than I did, that maybe he was failing as a parent,
Hmm.
that Owen was struggling with all of these things.
Hmm.
And so it was harder for him to talk about it. And there was definitely many a late nights that we spent staying up and having really different opinions about how we should move forward, with all the different assessments and care options,
Hmm.
um, because it is a really disorganized world. And right now it's very divided into private options that are often super expensive, and not accessible for everyone, and public options through the program that we went through in Colorado is called Child Find. I'm not sure if it has different names in different states, but it's a public option through a school system, even when they're younger than school age, that you go through and you get tested. Um, but it's a confusing process and it's a long process. There's often many months between appointments and then many weeks until you get results.
Hmm.
Um, meanwhile, you're living every day with a kiddo, that you just desperately wish you had better answers for.
The so so often not being on the same page and
Yeah.
having to try to get um w- what helped
Um,
you how to like come to agreements.
what helped was us having conversations together with doctors,
Mm.
because when I would take him to an appointment and then come home and Shawn would have lots of questions for me that I hadn't thought to ask, or vice versa, um, that made just communication really difficult. And
You'd
so,
get frustrated with each other or
yes,
okay. Yeah.
yeah, because we both process things in our own brains in such a different way that meant we would ask different questions of the doctor and
Right.
um, wonder different things or be fearful of different things. And so when we could be together at appointments,
Mm.
that started making a world of difference.
Nice. The you're hearing the same information and able to kind of make uh understand uh the options uh ahead of you. Yeah.
Yes.
Um boy, that just sounds so hard. Um uh with with your son uh needing the the care and the help, uh how does this affect his siblings?
It has. meant that our daughter she functions a lot like an oldest child. And so I think it's maybe her um, instincts of nurturing coming out as well. But
She's second oldest.
she is second oldest. Yep.
Okay.
And she's pretty close. They're only 2 years apart. And so she very much tends to jump in and help with her younger two brothers. But it has always meant for the oldest two, I think it's of any typical relationship too. They're close in age, and so they bicker a lot. But it's not hasn't been until more recent older years that she's able to understand Owen's diagnosis a little bit better, that she has some more compassion. It's been a beautiful thing that not only does she have more compassion for her brother, but she also has really taken an interest in friendship with kids with similar struggles as Owen at school. And so that's been a really beautiful silver lining from it. But the little two, I would say that they don't know a life anything other than Owen going to appointments and having a little bit of extra care. And so it has developed them to both be, I would say, definitely extra compassion as well.
Yeah. On the hard days, Kristen, that you might feel overwhelmed or discouraged,
Yeah.
what do you do for self-care and getting through those hard days?
I have little things that help a ton, like my favorite cup of tea or a little 3-minute break of some yoga stretches that are my go-tos. And so if the kids see me pulling out my tea or stepping off into the corner and starting to do my stretches, they know, okay, give mama a little breathing room right here.
Nice.
Yes. Because the reality is that I don't have a ton of time for lengthy self-care things. But I've developed habits over the years that have set me up for better success, like waking up before all the kids do so that I can start my day with quiet and with getting in the word, and have my mind a little bit settled and ready for the day rather than hit the ground running.
Yeah. The you mentioned that you and Owen go to counseling appointments at the same time. How has counseling helped you as a mom? What have you learned through that?
Counseling has helped me heal from so many of the traumas that I experienced when I was younger. And I'm still working through some of that and maybe always will be. But it has helped me heal in a way that means I'm not passing a lot of those same things on to Owen. And so I am able to parent him in a way that is teaching him how to advocate for himself. I think while I've learned in counseling to advocate for my own self, I've been simultaneously learning how to advocate well for Owen as he has gone through all these appointments and then just all of the extra things that you need to deal with when your kiddo is undiagnosed. It meant for us a lot of extra appointments at school, sometimes with other parents, from misunderstandings or struggles he was going through. There was just a lot of opportunity and a lot of room for advocacy, not only from us advocating for him, but really wanting him to learn to advocate for himself, because the ultimate goal is we want to teach our kids how to think, not just what to think. And so if we can raise grownups that are hardworking and responsible and self-sufficient, but also they keep a heart soft enough to still become who Jesus wants them to become.
Mm.
Um, I think that's ultimate winning right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I love that. Um, Teaching your kids how to think, not what to think. Um, and mm, it's it's hard because just telling them what to think or what to do um, is easier and quicker.
So much
Um,
easier. Yep.
yeah. Um, the for listeners out there who don't have a child with autism or special needs, but maybe friends and family of uh, uh, with that, w- what advice do you have, Kristen, for as a friend or family member to like support or understand and to be helpful?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think just grace upon grace. Um, because I think the reality is that even if you have a proper diagnosis and even if you are well resourced, that every day is different and so much of it is unknown, and you have to learn to expect the unexpected with these kiddos. And not always can we show up for our dinner plans because maybe he's having a huge meltdown, or not always can we stay at the park as long as everybody else because he is having an OCD type reaction to the bugs that are there. Um,
Mm,
so it's just like these little nuances that we have to learn for our family to be really flexible. Um, and so when people are flexible with us, that is a huge gift.
mm,
Um, and so, I mean, I think I'm thinking now to like Christmas and different things, that sometimes when you don't understand what's going on in these kiddos, um, just the way they process things differently than us. Like, for example, opening of a Christmas gift. If it's a gift that Owen didn't ask for and it's unexpected,
mm,
the unexpectedness to him is really hard to process. And so he doesn't have the same like look of elation and surprise and glee at a new gift, or even gratitude for it,
yeah.
um, that some other kid might naturally have. And as he's gotten older, he's been able to gain the skill a little bit better.
Mm,
But and other kid might like woohoo when they open it, but Owen just stares at it blankly and says, "I didn't ask for this." And it's
mm,
not that he's not grateful or not that he doesn't like it, but
yeah.
he just is processing it
Yeah.
differently.
I didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Mm,
Um, so grace for moments like that when, of
mm,
course we would love for grandma to get a huge hug and a thank you right away instead of I didn't ask for this, but that's just reality sometimes.
yeah.
So,
That's Owen.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The uh before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about church community and support for church from church.
Yeah.
Uh can you share what that's been like for you and your family?
Yeah. One really neat thing about Owen is that from a very young age, he loves Jesus. Like he is just in love, and he loves to sing worship songs at the top of his lungs, and he loves to have conversations about Jesus, and he loves to serve at church and get involved. Um, and so that is a really beautiful thing about him. But the
Mm,
hard other side of that is, again, just him not interacting with the world the same as everybody else. And unfortunately, the reality is that I I don't know if I want to say most, but at least many of our churches are not equipped well to deal with kids with autism, or um, not well trained in the volunteer staff, or even the paid staff, um, to know and to expect the differences from these kiddos. And so we did have an experience at a church we were at before, where Owen was getting involved, serving and getting involved in the like Wednesday night youth ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And he would go every time and look forward to it and just be so excited. And
Like youth group or
yes,
student ministry type stuff. Yeah,
yes, exactly.
fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He just thought every bit of it. He loved the teaching. He loved the games. He just thought every bit of it was a blast. And I mentioned in the previous episode that I had spine surgeries, but when I had that surgery, one of our sweet neighbors who was a senior in high school and also going to the same youth ministry volunteered to take Owen. And that for us was super special, because here was a kid that Owen looked up to and that we trusted. And he got to spend that extra, 7-minute car ride with him,
Yeah.
just getting mentored a little. And so it was a really positive thing for our family. And Owen coming early with this neighbor friend, unfortunately, the church didn't love. And instead of dealing with it in a way that they had asked us to make different arrangements, or, just say, hey, buddy, next time this can't be, or, just dealing with it in a proper way. Unfortunately, they put him outside. And for a typical 12-year-old, that would have been a problem. But for our family, that was a real problem and a safety concern. And so I did decide to go ahead and talk to the church about it. And this was our first time ever calling for a meeting, or asking for a meeting with church leaders in all of our years of being church. And so it wasn't your typical, we don't love the music that's happening, or, just complaints that some people can have about church. It to us really felt like a dire meeting that we needed to have. And unfortunately, it wasn't well received by the church leadership. And I think it was probably just a lack of understanding on their part. But it was not a situation that was going to improve. And so unfortunately, we did decide to change churches at that point, which was so hard for Owen to understand, hard for our other kids.
He loved going there.
He loved it. Yeah. And it was a place where he thought he was going to be safe, and he thought he was going to be really well loved. And, that's obviously everyone's hope for what should be happening at church, but that's not what our experience was.
Yeah. Before becoming a counselor, I went to seminary to become a chaplain, and I didn't have any classes that talked about ministry to families or children with autism, or mental health struggles. This was 25 years ago, but and so I'm hoping pastors get better training now. Well, you said you wish that they had been more understanding. The besides that situation, were there any other like concerns or things that could have been better
about the church? I think our particular situation with them came from a culture that I think is all too prevalent in churches, but is also not unique to churches. I think it's prevalent in the corporate world and other situations as well. But a culture of, if the top person believes it or says it, then it becomes gospel truth and no one's allowed to question it.
Mm,
Um, and the culture of not being allowed to ask questions in a healthy way, um, I think is that gray area of entering how people get into abusive type of relationships and
mm,
situations. Um, but um,
mm,
yeah, when we started looking for a new church, we definitely were looking for a culture that welcomed questions, not just from internally within their own staff and volunteers, but within the church body as well, that a leadership that really wanted to be held accountable.
mm. Yeah. Um, it 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 just pains me to hear your family and Owen having to go through that situation. Um, the uh, it I think uh, I'm trying to fight from saying the word neat. I'm trying to find a better word. Um, I'm glad that you guys were able to find another church um,
Mm,
that you feel safe and comfortable in. Um, I can also see like families if they go through similar type situations, not wanting to risk being a part of a church again, like
mm,
being discouraged, being hurt uh, by it. Um,
absolutely.
the if there, uh, what would you want people to understand about uh, Owen or children that uh, have autism um, in regards to like being a part of the church?
Yeah. I think an increased training and awareness among their volunteers and staff about how these kiddos can get involved, I think would be just the biggest blessing and gift, because at least our experience with Owen is that he loves to be involved and he loves to be helpful. He loves to help kids that are younger than him. So, helping check in families in the morning and jobs like that give him a sense of ownership and a sense of pride
Mhm.
that goes really, really far with him. And so, being able, having the resources that would enable kiddos to get involved, I think, um, could just go a long way for families that maybe have been made to feel like they need to keep in the background,
Mm.
or just get along as best as possible. But so changing that narrative rather than, just kind of coping here, but, we want you here so much, we want you front and center, I think would be a beautiful message.
Yeah, and not just we're tolerating you or you're just here to observe, but giving them permission to be involved and to help,
Yeah,
and that your contribution is important. Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, that's neat. So he's 13. Does he feel more like a teenager or is he still a boy?
Gosh, he is so stuck in between.
Oh, so he isn't that in between.
Yes, yeah, he's
Oh,
very much in between. And
okay.
you can tell that when he gets privileges like bike riding down to the gas station to grab a drink and calling us, make sure he knows he got there, and calling us when he's about to head home and checking in when he gets home,
Mm,
those increased privileges have just been really fun and exciting for him, and really fun for us to be able to see him, because as he's growing up and we weren't sure what it is exactly, um, the best ways to help him and what we were dealing with, a lot of that felt really unknown. Like, what is Owen going to be able to do and at what age? Um, but just seeing him blossom in ways that were truly hard for us to imagine at all before has been really fun.
Nice. Yeah. Um, as a mom, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, as a mom, not just of Owen, but as a mom of four, um, uh, well, how do you do with worry? And what are some lessons you're learning um, as mom lately?
Yeah. Gosh, worry is one that I have to battle against, and I seem to just continuously need to be learning the lesson over and over again of bringing it to the Lord, bringing it to the Lord. Um, because the truth is that they are on loan to me from God, and I cannot control everything in their little worlds.
Mm,
As hard as I try to wrestle my way into controlling it, it's just not the way it works.
mm,
And so, yeah, worry is a struggle for me. But what I am learning to do with that worry, I feel like is most important. I mentioned in the prior episode that my mom was just really emotionally distant, and as we went through the divorce with my dad and got older, she just became more so. Um,
mm,
and I very much want to learn how um, to do the opposite, to relate really well to my kids. Because,
mm,
our ultimate goal for them is that they would just have individual, beautiful relationships with Jesus. And I know one of the barriers that I had in my own formation of a relationship with him was just not knowing how to relate well and how to be emotionally healthy in general. Um, and so I think if we can get to a point where we are learning how to be emotionally healthy, present parents with our kids and have good relationships with him, I think our hope is that that will translate into their relationships with Jesus. So we are learning to name our feelings and to call our own selves out on them as parents and announce our feelings. I am feeling really frustrated, or gosh, I am so disappointed because this didn't happen, or I am really hopeful and but I'm nervous, just
mm.
naming them out loud for the kids, because it's not something that either of us had modeled. So we're learning right alongside the kids.
Yeah,
um, yeah.
that that's as a counselor, I love hearing that because uh, it you're teaching your kids so much when you do that. Um, and for for children, adults, where their parents did not name their feelings, so much of it is just trying to guess and interpret what is going on. And when we share our feelings, it makes relationships and homes safer because um, we know why mom is doing yoga in the corner, um, and and it'll be okay too, because when we name our feelings, they they get smaller often,
Mm.
you
Oh,
know,
that's such a good way of putting it. Yeah.
and it's like uh, I'm frustrated or I'm upset, but it's okay,
Mm.
and it's okay uh, that I feel that way, and so when you're sad and upset and disappointed, it's okay for you to say that too. Just kind of like what you said in terms of, the church leadership being able to hear the feedback, but
Mm.
in homes too, uh, being able to hear and handle each other's emotions, and
Yes.
yeah.
Something that has been, it was eye-opening for me, but has been really helpful for me in teaching the kids about emotions, is teaching them that they are temporary, that like you are so mad right now, or you feel so betrayed by your brother right now,
Mm,
but it's not going to last forever. And also that to expect the whole wide range of emotions to come to us. It's not if I get angry, it's when I get angry.
mm.
And so learning how to deal with it and expect them, it seems to ease the blow of the negative emotions arriving.
That's so good. I haven't I haven't heard that before. The when I feel those feelings, when I get angry. Yeah, that's so good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, the so uh, are there with parenting or and with parenting a child with autism, are there any resources that have been helpful over the years?
Oh, yes. There is a certain book that we have. Well, I first read and then we read out loud to our oldest. Um, Owen's particular type of autism has also been referred to as Asperger's in the past.
Mhm.
I know they're kind of doing away with that term, but his particular type is Asperger's, and it's called the Asper Kids Secret Social Guide, or sorry, the Asper Kids Secret Book of Social Rules. And it not only taught me the way that he sees the world, but also really helpful ways to help him interact or maybe change the narrative sometimes. Um, so, yeah, I would say that was a really well done book.
Uh, so it's been not just for parents; it's helped him with certain skills.
Yes, it's written to him. I have read a large handful of books, and honestly, I think the ones that were written to the kids were most helpful for me in understanding how he experiences the world. Um, yeah, so that one's the top.
Nice, nice. The I I don't want to keep you too long, but I I didn't ask earlier. I'm curious. Um, what has it been like for him to have OCD?
Mm.
What does that look like, and how does that affect you guys?
That's shown up in different ways at different times. I think when people think of OCD, they think of a lot of hand washing and germophobia type things, and it used to show up that way. Um, if one of us had been holding the baby, he was nervous, maybe the baby drooled on us, and that would make us dirty. And so he didn't really want us near him. And so, a lot of OCD is not rational fears, but that was one of them. Um, Lately, it's been with bug bites, or if somebody has spilled something and there's crumbs in the area, that feels really stressful to him. So it's things that thoughts that go on repeat. And so sometimes they have to do with germs and being dirty, like all these ones I've mentioned.
Mhm.
But then it also can show up with suicidal ideation, that gets stuck on like a record player, just playing it over and over in his head. So it's not
Mm,
so much that he has the intent or the desire to really hurt himself. It's that
mm,
in a moment of sadness, that thought kind of pops into his mind and then just keeps going and going, and it's
mm.
really hard for him to set it down.
To let go of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. So for him, it's not necessarily the behavior part, the compulsive behavior part, but more the obsessive thoughts, getting stuck with certain ideas or thoughts.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And has he developed the ways to replace those thoughts on his own, or are you having to like help him a lot with those things?
We do have to help him. Replace was, you just said that was, it's an important part of it, because just telling him to stop having it or stop thinking it doesn't work. We do have to replace whatever the fear is, whatever the lie is that he's struggling with something that's true. Um, we pray together a lot about it. Pray is actually our code word. If he is having that suicidal ideation just stuck in his head over and over again, he just kind of walks by me and says, pray. And I know what that means. And so, because sometimes having a full blown conversation about it only worsens it being stuck in his head. So we use code words. We also have a code word of he's very into aviation, loves flight simulators, loves reading about airplanes. And so our code word for signaling to him, you're getting yourself into some trouble here and you really need to stop and let's reroute the situation, as we tell him Mayday. And he knows what Mayday means, and that's really effective. That even no matter what he's stuck in, he'll stop and he'll take a breath, and we can kind of reroute together.
Nice. The I like how you're like collaborating with him to find those things that work for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, as we wind down our time, Kristen, um, uh, any last advice or lessons that you want to share?
I would just encourage, if you are a parent that has a kid that either has diagnosed special needs or has maybe you're wondering about something, I would just encourage you to really be intentional about not letting yourself experience shame over it. It's something that, I mentioned I experienced for too long with it. And a friend said to me, I just thought she was so wise once. Um, I told her I was struggling, feeling shame about the younger kids and what they're experiencing, and was all the appointments we were going to and all the time and the attention that we had to spend with Owen, were they just feeling neglected? And she said, Kristen, God knew exactly who Owen was going to be and exactly who they were going to be. And God put them in the exact order that they showed up in your family on purpose. And this wasn't a mistake. This isn't something that they're just having to cope with. This is like who they were created to be and when they were created to be on purpose. And that just helped me a ton to remember the truth of that. So yeah, I would just encourage anybody that your kiddo was created exactly the way they are on purpose. And your family was knit together that way on purpose.
That's great. There, there's no mistake. Yeah. Um, how can listeners connect with you or read more of your writing?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. At my website, just www.kristenhallinan.com. That's the best place.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Kristen, about your story and also sharing about your family. Please say hi to your kids for me.
Oh, yes.
And
Hi,
Owen.
Owen. Hi,
Yes,
Reagan.
yes.
Hi, Andy and Jack.
Thank you for sharing your mom with us, kids.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.